All right, let's switch gears a little bit here because I did want to play this video. It's a little bit maybe outside of our typical wheelhouse, but actually it kind of relates to a lot of stuff that we talk about a lot. But there was this clip of Tomi Lahren on the Laura Ingraham show that's been going super viral for obvious reasons once you see the clip. And there's a lot here. I found this very interesting. It's basically Tomi Lahren is trashing men. We're about to play, particularly young men. We're about to play the clip. Now, there's something about this kind of like the battle of the sexes type content that just gets a big reaction out of everyone. You know, there's something like women venting about men is something that women tend to like enjoy, you know, like, oh my God, men are trash, right? Oh my God, yes, men are trash. Everyone who's had a bad experience with a man now can like get on board with this. And there is something that men, particularly when there's like an attractive woman bashing men love to like hate that content. Like it's like catnip for the sexes. And I will preface by saying that I think it's one of my biggest objections to feminism, broadly speaking. I always think the battle of the sexes shit is wrong and bad for all of us. Like, it is just not the role. Men and women are not natural enemies. We are so clearly like yin and yang. We're here for each other. We help each other. We make each other's lives better. And anytime that people are getting into this, like, no, it's all men's fault. No, it's all women's fault. I always think like, you're just missing the point entirely. But anyway, let's play the clip and then we can discuss a little bit.
It's a major problem. And, you know, Speaker Johnson has been talking about those maybe deadbeat folks that are on Medicaid, and maybe some of those folks are the stay-at-home sons. We don't know. But I'll tell you this, leave it to Gen Z to rebrand laziness and social awkwardness as something cutesy, like a stay-at-home son. They did much the same thing with quiet quitting, where you can go to work and do less. And if you call it quiet quitting, it's somehow better. But Laura, I got to tell you, this is also a big problem when it comes to, I think, declining birth rates, people not getting married and having children. You know, that's a big problem. They blame it on women. Well, look at what young women have to choose from. The pickings are slim. Yes, we might have a feminism problem in America, but it's the feminization of men. There are a lot of young women out there that want to get married. They want to have kids. They want to have stable families. But there are a lot of young men out there who want to live in mama's basement and order DoorDash. And therein lies a big part of the problem. It's a major problem.
All right. So, look, there's a lot here. And there's also, of course, a lot of policy that has to do with this outcome. I will say it is hard to not like the kind of lack of self-awareness from someone like Tomi Lahren, who, like, let's just, you know, like I said to you before, like I've never thought she was like particularly good looking or whatever, but like she's an attractive woman. She's where she is because of her looks. Like, I don't think that's like an out of line thing to say. Tomi Lahren, it was never like, whoa, the depth of knowledge that Tomi Lahren brings to a discussion is just why in her 20s she was like a successful millionaire. It's like you were like, you played that game. You got lots of doors open to you because you were a young, attractive woman. Now she's a woman in her 30s who does not have kids and is talking about the problem with plummeting birth rates and then blaming others for it. And I will say that I think part of the reason, and we can get into some of the more substantive like policy stuff, but part of the reason why stuff like this is infuriating to men in general is, number one, it's what she's saying is actually not true. And there's a bunch of social science on this. It's men actually are more likely, young men are more likely to want to get married and settle down than young women for whatever reason these days. I was surprised by that myself. But this is a thing that I think almost everyone, I think every guy knows this. And I think most women who are, you know, honest or have a little bit of wisdom and a little bit of experience in life know this too. It simply is not the case that there are slim pickings or there are no good men who want to settle down. The issue is that Tomi Lahren doesn't want any of those men. Every woman has guys who are like in the friend zone who would be really good to you. But what happens to a lot of women is that they just have higher expectations than that. And they're like, no, I don't want that guy. I want the guy who is X, Y, and Z. Like, you want this guy who's like a top 1%er guy. And like, okay, that's fine to want that. But then the question might be, well, look, I mean, like, what are you bringing to the table? Because the thing about the guy who you want, who's like at the very top, is that guy has options. That guy's got lots of options. And so like maybe you're not bringing anything to the table that makes that guy want to marry you. But the truth is that I just do not believe that Tomi Lahren over say the last 10, 15 years has not had lots of decent guys who would have loved to be committed to her. And so I'm just saying, like, if you want to talk about plummeting birth rates, if you want to talk about, the feminization of men or whatever, it's like, is there ever a conversation that should happen about the unrealistic standards of women? Because, like, I got to say, I think that's a part of this dynamic. I'm not saying that that's all of it, but it's like, no, the truth is that if you're not kind of like shallow and materialistic, it's unbelievable, by the way, they have, there's the Whatever podcast and the Fresh and Fit podcast. They've both like blown up because they do a lot of this, like, content, like this type of stuff. But I will say, now, neither of those shows are my thing, but there is something interesting that they've become so big. And one thing that I've said, because I've seen like some of the clips, it is when they'll interview these young women and they ask them what they want in a guy, and they just start describing all of the characteristics, and then they'll tell them what percentage of society fits those, so just be like, well, I want a guy who's like 6 foot tall, and I'd like him to be a good looking guy. I'd like him to be a funny guy. It's important that he makes at least 6 figures. It's important that he and like they'll list all these things, and you're like, yeah, that's 0.03% of men fall into that. So yes, it's true that if you're only interested in the top 0.03% of men, it's slim pickings. Yes, but like, okay, that's true for everybody. That's true for men too. If men were like, I'll only date a supermodel, yeah, that's kind of hard to find. But if you have more realistic standards, it's just not, I don't believe it's the case that like it's impossible to find a decent person. I just don't buy that. Anyway, any thoughts on any of this, Rob? Because we could get into some of the more actual substantive stuff about why it might be that young men are living in their mother's basement.
Well, in defense at stay at home and live in the basement men.
Well, you live on your own, but okay.
I do now. I didn't always, and but I will say that I think for most of those people, they're currently being a loser, and I don't think they like that. I don't think that's what they're looking for. I think some of them might have even settled into the lifestyle. Yeah. You might have the rare autistic one that really loves his video games and wasn't going to get a job. But I'm going to guess by and large, most of those men, if there was a clear path towards a job and pursuing a family and all those things, I bet that I bet that they would like that, and I bet some of those people are even currently looking for jobs. And I think as a young man, it takes some time to get it together. I was a loser for a long time, and sometimes there just aren't job opportunities right out the gate, and you kind of settle into that there aren't job opportunities right out the gate. I don't think most of the young men you're describing left college and went, this is my dream to go move back home, and then were at home and started ordering. I bet if you spoke to most of those men, they enjoy the time when they're drinking or the couple times that they're out with their friends playing video games. But I'm guessing by and large, they haven't gone, hey, this is the life, and I hope that this is what I'm doing forever.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's not that there's nothing to her point. There has been a feminization of men. I don't think that's good for men or women.
Fluoride.
It's clearly a part of it. Well, I don't drink no fluoride, and look at me.
I'm pure plastic, baby.
Yeah, there you go.
Plastic particles.
And look at us, just poster boys of pure masculinity. But like, so I'm not saying there's nothing to that, but I do agree with you. I think by and large, like, I don't think too many people want to be adults who are living in their mom's basement. I think that it is more born out of financial necessity. And it's not a coincidence that when we lived in a society where a guy could just go wait online and get a job at a factory and that job could support a family, that's what they went and did. And there aren't opportunities like that as readily available. And so now that's not what people are doing. I think that obviously there's been government policies that have drastically driven up the price of education, the price of real estate, the price of health insurance, the price of, like all of the things that you'd need to be able to afford in order to support a family. And, I also think that through laws, we've made marriage a much less desirable situation for a man to be in than it otherwise would be. And for many, many generations, for probably hundreds, if not thousands of years, essentially, for better or worse, I'm not saying this is perfect, but the way that society kind of channeled men into marriage was through a series of incentives. And a lot of them were sexual, but not all of them. But in general, for a very long period of time, out of wedlock sex was very demonized and stigmatized. And the idea was for men, if you want to get laid, you got to commit to a woman. And I will say, when you're talking about young men, you're talking about men in their 20s, channeling if you want to get laid, you have to do these steps. You can get men to run through walls. You know what I mean? You can get a lot from young men if you channel, this is how you go about getting sex. On top of that, the reward for men after getting married would be that you get to be the man. You're the man of the house. Father knows best. You will be the leader. These are the type of incentives that men respond to. Almost every guy wants to be the man to some degree in his own little realm. And we kind of, one by one, stripped all of these incentives away. Like, now men are in a situation where, like, particularly, by the way, the men who Tomi Lahren is going to be interested in, because you can already tell, like, by the nature of her complaint that it's like, you're picky about who you want to be with, which is fine. I'm not saying you can't be. I'm just saying there's reality. And now, for those women who are going after the 0.03% of men, when you're going after them, it's like those guys have tons of options and they don't have to get married to get laid. They could just get laid all the time. Now, right away, look, you're just fucking with the incentives of young men, because now right away, the sexual incentive is no longer to get married and settle down. The sexual incentive is like, don't get married and settle down. Now you can play the field and have sex with lots of girls. And like, that's what men are biologically wired to do. And so it's just like but then on top of that, I mean, the financial, there was one clip I saw where Andrew Schultz had a divorce lawyer on. And the way he said it, I thought was actually very reasonable. So he was like, he goes, look, if you look at marriage as a contract, right? Like most marriages that I know, he said something along these lines. I might not get it exactly right, but he basically said that, like, okay, so like there'll be, let's say you have like a marriage, and so the deal is essentially that it's like the guy's like, okay, I'm gonna go work and make money to like support our family, having a nice lifestyle, and like you're going to like, bear children, deliver children, you're gonna be a mother, you're gonna, whatever, we're gonna have sex, you're gonna cook or clean or whatever. I'm not saying like it has to be like the strictest traditional marriage, but like more or less this is kind of the deal. But the contract of marriage is only enforceable on one end. Like the man is responsible to fulfill his obligation, even if the contract is void, even if the marriage is off, and the woman is not at all. She does not, if you get divorced, you have to continue to financially support her, but she doesn't have to continue to be nice to you or have sex with you or even be the type of mother that you want her to be or any of that. So you've like created this situation where it's a big risk for men. Particularly if the type of men that someone like Tomi Lahren's going to be into is probably like a dude who's got some money. And then there's like, it's a huge financial risk now. So I just don't like, if you want to just sit here and demonize men like all men are shit, it's like, you know, human beings are fucked up creatures. And so we're all a mess, you know? And because of that, it's easy to demonize men or demonize women. You know, it's like you can always find the character flaws in people and then be like, yeah, look at them, they're terrible. But you know, all those things considered, and the fact that we're all a mess, there's lots of good people out there. There's lots of good people who would treat someone right, who'd be a nice person to like start a life with. And this type of energy is just fucking toxic. And again, it's like, it's like we say this a lot, but it's almost like with anything else. If you're going, you know, if you're a comedian and you go on stage all the time and you're never getting laughs, and you're like, man, all the crowds are terrible. It's like, that's convenient, you know? And to see Laura Ingraham and Tomi Lahren, like these two unmarried, childless women sitting here and bitching about men, it's like, that's also pretty goddamn convenient. Pretty goddamn convenient that the problem is everything except you.